Games can be a powerful tool used to teach things in a more fun and interesting way. This video series is to delve into what games can be teaching you about the environment and general ecology, as well as it being my attempt to link concepts and definitions to these games. In this specific video, I will be answering these two questions. What is a keystone species? And how does Subnautica teach this to you? Warning, there will be story and environment spoilers, so come back if you want to play the game. I extremely recommend it. It is a really amazing game. According to Google, a keystone species is a species on which another species in an ecosystem largely depend on, such that if it were removed, the ecosystem would change drastically. Now, how does Subnautica teach this to you? Let's get some background knowledge about the game first. Subnautica is a survival game set on an alien planet, covered mostly in water, known as 4546b. The main character was on a ship called the Aurora, which crash landed on this planet. As you try to find a way off the planet, you discover that there is a highly infectious and deadly bacteria called the Kara, which is in the water, and you discover that you are infected. In trying to find a cure, you find that there is an ancient species who accidentally unleashed this disease here in trying to study the Sea Emperor Leviathan for their immunity to the Kara. It is then discovered that a species, called the peeper, is distributing the enzyme to help slow the rate of death and infection in the local wildlife. Now, according to the definition from earlier, the peepers are keystone species, right? Because if they weren't distributing the enzyme, then all life would have been eradicated. But there doesn't have to be just one keystone species in the ecosystem, and there is more to this story. I first want to discuss that there are many categories of keystone species, which is how many species in an ecosystem can be considered keystone species. Three big ones are predators, ecosystem engineers, and mutualists, with other ones being things like prey and plants. And the interesting thing is that these lists can even vary from scientist to scientist to include types like herbivores and competitors. This just goes to show that there can be a lot of creatures that be considered a keystone species, all for differing reasons. Alright, so now that I've kind of thrown this all at you, thrown in these random things, so I'm going to explain some of these keystone species in the context of Subnautica. Both peepers and the Sea Emperor Leviathan can be considered mutualist keystone species. A mutualist keystone species is actually two species interacting together, depending on one another to survive. The peepers interact with the Sea Emperor Leviathan to get the enzyme to distribute to the land around them, thus keeping the planet alive. But they also provide food for the last Sea Emperor Leviathan, which happens to be held captive in a precursor containment facility for studying. Peepers are essentially the bees of the Subnautica world, but they're distributing the enzyme, not the pollen, like bees are. An ecosystem engineer is one that shapes the habitat and ecosystem due to either a abiotic, non-living, or biotic, living usually within the organism type of factor. One ecosystem engineer, one that'll resonate with us here on Earth, is the coral in Subnautica. They mold the very landscape with their bodies, serving unique habitats for many of the species of creatures both in Subnautica and the corals of our own planet. If the corals weren't there, the levels of biodiversity in places like the shallows would not exist. Likewise with our own reefs, and we can see that in the bleaching of the reefs, how that's actually causing there to be less biodiversity and less life there in general. I do, however, believe, in a stretch thought, that the Sea Emperor Leviathan is also an ecosystem engineer in a way. As towards the end of the game, the character hatches and releases the last remaining babies of the trapped Leviathan. They each migrate and reside in each of the biomes, curing wildlife of the Kara, as the planet was essentially a ticking time bomb for all life to die. Like, things were still getting infected, even though there was the enzyme from the peepers, because it wasn't a strong version of the enzyme. This would essentially change the landscape by reducing the pressures on the species needing to select for high Kara tolerance, thus allowing for a larger range of individuals in a population, and eventually leading to new species entirely, both plants and animals alike. I wanted to specifically cover peepers, Sea Emperor Leviathans, and corals in this video, but with how diverse the creatures in Subnautica are, I'm sure there are many more keystone species out there. Comment down below if there are species in Subnautica or in other games you've played that you think could be Keystone Species. I recommend also researching the species in your actual region and country where you live. Kind of see what there is the glue for the ecosystems that you see around you. Now before I end this video, I wanted to mention that while I have discussed what and why Keystone Species are important in an ecosystem through this game, there are many species deemed umbrella species in our world, and undoubtedly in Subnautica, where they also are very important to their ecosystem. It is a team effort and everyone has their part. Alright, thank you all for watching. If you liked the video and enjoyed the content being made, leave a like and a subscribe, maybe even hit that bell icon, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!